They sent me a termination email at 8:02 a.m. before I'd finished my coffee. By 8:48, the name of the brand they fired me for was mine. Trademarked, filed, approved for publication. And I didn't even break a sweat. 6 years building their empire, 46 minutes to burn it down. They thought they were eliminating a problem. They had no idea they'd just armed their biggest threat. My name is Elena Ward, and at 8:02 a.m., on a Tuesday morning in March, I was worth exactly nothing to Vexora Labs. The email arrived while I was reviewing slides for what should have been the biggest presentation of my career. Subject line: Employment Status Update, 3 paragraphs, 97 words, 6 years reduced to corporate speak about restructuring and strategic realignment. I didn't flinch, didn't gasp, just took another sip of my Ethiopian single origin and watched the cursor blink on my screen. Outside my home office window, San Francisco was waking up, oblivious to the fact that a $100 million brand was about to change hands for the price of a trademark filing fee. $325. That's what revenge costs when you know exactly where to aim. I'd seen this coming for weeks. The canceled one-on-ones, the mysterious alignment meetings I wasn't invited to, the way Bryce Landon, our new chief strategy officer, imported from McKinsey, like expensive furniture, had started referring to the brand instead of Elena's brand, as if 6 years of my blood could be erased by careful pronoun selection. At 8:03, my Slack went dark. By 8:04, my email access was revoked. They were efficient. I'll give them that. But efficiency without intelligence is just organized stupidity. Because at 8:05, while their IT department was probably high-fiving over their swift execution, I opened my personal laptop, the one where I'd been keeping records since the day Bryce started rewriting history. Screenshots, timestamps, and most importantly, the original trademark search I'd run in 2018, the one showing Auric, was unclaimed, waiting like an unmarked grave. They'd never filed the paperwork. In 6 years, through 3 funding rounds and 2 acquisitions attempts, nobody had bothered to secure the actual name. Why would they? I was the brand. I was the strategy. I was the voice that turned a garage laboratory into a beauty empire. I was also, apparently, expendable. The automated system I'd set up 2 weeks prior needed just one trigger my corporate email bounce back, like dominoes arranged by someone who understood both revenge and regex. Everything fell into perfect sequence. Pre-filled forms uploaded to USPTO, payment processed from my personal account, priority examination requested. By 8:48, while Bryce was probably drafting his all-hands email about exciting organizational changes, I received the confirmation: application received, publication pending. Auric M was mine. Not because I stole it, because they never owned it. They owned my time, my ideas, my loyalty, all contracts I'd fulfilled, and they'd terminated, but they'd forgotten the most basic rule of building an empire: secure your foundations before you build your towers. I closed my laptop and finished my coffee. Somewhere across the city, in a glass tower overlooking the bay, an executive team was about to learn the difference between firing someone and disarming them. They thought they'd sent me to die quietly in the job market. Instead, they'd sent me to the patent office. 6 years ago. Vexora Labs was 3 chemists and a PowerPoint deck. I was contractor number 4, brought in to help with messaging for their Series A pitch. What I found was brilliant science trapped in terrible storytelling, like watching Mozart played on a kazoo. The founders had developed a peptide complex that could actually reverse sun damage at the cellular level. Revolutionary technology. Nomenclature that sounded like a disease. They were calling it VX Derm Cellular Restoration Protocol. I sat through their pitch practice once and watched a venture capitalist's eyes glaze over by slide 3. You need a story, not a chemistry lecture. I told them, you need a name that makes people feel something. Auric, from Aurum Gold and Unique. Luxury meets science. Aspiration in 5 letters. I sketched the logo on a napkin during that same meeting, clean lines suggesting both molecular bonds and Art Deco elegance. It tested off the charts with their target demographic: The Series A closed at $12 million, double their ask. They hired me full-time the next day. Chief Creative Officer, they called it, though I was really chief of everything that wasn't lab work: brand strategy, product naming, campaign development, the voice behind every email, every Instagram post, every investor update that transformed us from promising biotech startup to the future of luxury skincare. When we launched, Vogue called Aurique the brand that makes science feel like poetry. I wrote that poetry, every word. The first signs of erasure came slowly. After our Series B, my name started disappearing from press releases. The founding team became the preferred attribution. Then came the organizational charts where I appeared in smaller and smaller font, tucked into corners like a footnote. Bryce Landon arrived after Series C, $50 million from Andreessen Horowitz, Harvard MBA, Wharton undergrad, the kind of pedigree that makes investors feel safe. He spoke in frameworks and matrices, turned every conversation into a case study. Within a month, he'd commissioned a brand audit from his former consulting firm. "We need to evolve beyond founder-driven narrative," he announced in a meeting I wasn't invited to but heard about anyway. Marketing departments are terrible at keeping secrets. The isolation was surgical. First, they created a brand council that met during my standing Tuesday calls with the lab team. Then they hired a VP of marketing who reported directly to Bryce, not me. Suddenly I needed approval for Instagram captions I'd been writing since the account had 12 followers. "It's not personal, Elena," Bryce told me during what would be our last one-on-one. "We're scaling. The brand needs to be bigger than any one person." "The brand exists because of one person," I replied. He smiled that consultant smile, all teeth and no warmth. Exactly the kind of thinking we need to evolve past. The final insult came 2 weeks before my termination, an all-hands where Bryce presented the refreshed brand strategy his consultants had developed. My work, filtered through PowerPoint templates and stripped of everything that made it human. They'd even tweaked the tagline I'd spent months perfecting, adding 2 words that destroyed the rhythm. I sat in the back, invisible, watching him take credit for ideas I'd birthed at 3:08 a.m., fueled by passion and Red Bull. That's when I decided to check the Trademarked database. Just curious, really. The search result made me laugh out loud. 6 years, hundreds of millions in projected revenue. Not one person had filed the paperwork to actually own the name I'd created on a napkin. They owned the formula, the patents, the contracts. But they'd forgotten to own the poetry. The revelation came during a Thursday afternoon Zoom call that I wasn't supposed to be on. Someone had forgotten to remove me from the recurring invite, and I joined from my phone, camera off, muted, invisible. Bryce was walking through his brand evolution roadmap with an agency called Cromwell and Associates. 23 slides of corporate doublespeak, all building to one conclusion: they were planning to refresh Aurique without me. New voice, new strategy, same name. "The trademark filing is in process with legal," Bryce said, clicking through timelines. "Should be completed by end of Q2. Should be. Future tense. I minimized Zoom and opened USPTO's database on my laptop. The search took 12 seconds. Status available, no pending applications, no international claims. 6 years of procrastination gift-wrapped in bureaucratic incompetence." That night, I built my war chest. Every email where I'd proposed the name Aurique. The original brand deck with my personal watermark. Invoices from my pre-employment contractor days showing I'd been developing the concept independently. Most damning, a pitch deck I'd created for a different client in 2017, where I'd used Aurique as a hypothetical luxury brand example. Dated, documented, indisputable. The trademark application would cost $325 per class of goods. I needed 3 classes to lock down cosmetics, skincare, and beauty tools. $975 to own what they assumed was already theirs. But first, I needed insurance. The next morning, I drafted the year-end brand strategy report Bryce had requested. 40 pages of insights, analytics, and recommendations, the kind of comprehensive document that made executives feel informed without requiring them to think. On page 37, buried in the appendix between social media metrics and influencer rankings, I added a single paragraph. Note the Auric TM brand concept, including name, visual identity, and core messaging, was initially developed by Elena Ward as independent creative work prior to formal employment with Vexora Labs. This pre-existing intellectual property was licensed to Vexora Labs under implied agreement during E. Ward's tenure as Chief Creative Officer. Legal dynamite disguised as a footnote. Bryce signed off on the report without reading past the executive summary. I knew he would. Consultants never read appendices. They just check that they exist. The document was filed with the board, submitted to investors, archived in 3 different systems, digital breadcrumbs that would be impossible to erase. That weekend, I created a Delaware LLC Ward Creative Holdings, clean, simple, untraceable, until someone bothered to look. The automated filing system I set up was a thing of beauty, a few hundred lines of code that would file my trademark application the moment my corporate email bounced. Priority examination requested. Express processing paid. I spent my last weeks at Vexora like a ghost preparing to haunt, documenting everything, archiving emails, watching Bryce dismantle my work with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never created anything original in his life. We're moving in a more data-driven direction, he announced in our final team meeting. Less intuition, more insights. I smiled and nodded. Intuition had built the brand. Data would now try to sustain it. Good luck with that. The trap was set, every piece of evidence in place. All I needed was for them to pull the trigger on their own execution. When the termination email finally arrived, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Not sadness, not anger, just the clean, sharp relief of watching a plan slide into motion with the precision of Swiss clockwork. They thought they were removing a problem employee. Really, they were activating a competing owner. By the time they realized their mistake, I'd already filed the international applications too. Europe, Asia, anywhere Auric might travel. I'd be there first, waiting with paperwork. $975 to steal a $100 million brand. No, $975. To prove it was never theirs to begin with. The beauty of the trap lay in its simplicity. Bryce wanted a final brand strategy document before my transition, a comprehensive knowledge transfer, he called it. What he really wanted was my brain on paper so they could continue without me. I gave him exactly what he asked for. 112 pages of strategic brilliance, consumer insights that had taken years to develop, campaign frameworks that could run for a decade, everything a McKinsey consultant would need to pretend he understood the soul of a brand he'd never built. But on page 17, nestled between a section on voice consistency and a chart about customer lifetime value, I planted the bomb. The Auric TEM concept was initially developed and used in commerce by Elena Ward outside of her employment scope, prior to Vexora Labs' commercialization. See Appendix J for historical documentation. Appendix J didn't exist. It didn't need to. The statement itself was the weapon. I formatted it in the same font, same size as everything else, no bold, no italics, just another line in an ocean of corporate prose, the kind of detail that gets skimmed during review but becomes gospel once it's signed. The document went through 3 rounds of revision. Minor edits each time, a comma here, a metric there. Nobody touched page 17. Why would they? It was perfect corporate nothing speak, the kind of language that sounds important while saying everything and nothing simultaneously. Bryce's signature appeared on the final version March 18, 2024 at 4:47 p.m. Digital timestamp preserved in DocuSign. I downloaded a certified copy for my records. But that wasn't enough. Traps work best in layers. The investor update went out monthly, always on the last Tuesday. I'd been writing them for 3 years, transforming lab data into stories that made venture capitalists reach for their checkbooks. The March edition would be my final one, though nobody knew it yet. Under the section titled Brand Assets and Intellectual Property, I included a routine update. The company continues to strengthen its IP portfolio, with trademark applications in process for core brand assets. Note: certain brand elements were developed through creative partnerships prior to formal company formation. See Brand Strategy Document V3.2 for complete attribution. Version 3.2. The one with page 17. The one Bryce had signed. The update went to 47 investors, 2 board members, the legal team. All received it, filed it, moved on to the financial projections. Paper trails are invisible until you need to follow them. My final masterstroke came during the all-hands presentation Bryce requested. Share your knowledge, he'd said. Help the team understand your creative process. I delivered the best presentation of my career. 60 slides on building a luxury brand from scratch. The psychology of aspiration, the architecture of desire. Everyone took notes. Marketing recorded it for training purposes. On slide 43, I included a timeline. The evolution of Aurique. It started in 2017 with a screenshot of my personal blog post about conceptualizing luxury in the digital age. The post where I'd first used Aurique as a theoretical case study, dated, public, archived by the Wayback Machine. As you can see, I said, laser pointer steady. Great brands often begin as thought experiments. Aurique existed as a concept before Vexora existed as a company. The magic happened when science met story. Heads nodded. Someone applauded. Bryce smiled his consultant smile, pleased with the knowledge transfer unfolding before him. He had no idea he was watching me document prior art in real time. The recording would become evidence. The timeline would become proof. Every element of my trap disguised as corporate cooperation. Each piece fitting together like a legal jigsaw puzzle they wouldn't know existed until it was complete. 3 days later, the termination email arrived, right on schedule. They'd taken everything they thought they needed. The trap snapped shut at 8:48 a.m. when the USPTO confirmed receipt of my trademark application. Priority examination. All classes covered. Prior use claimed and documented. Somewhere in Vexora's glass tower, a legal team was about to discover that their $100 million brand name had been filed by a former employee. They'd scramble for their documentation, find my carefully planted statements, and realize the horrible truth. Their own paperwork proved I was right. 8:02 a.m. The email hit my inbox with the weight of inevitability. 3 paragraphs of HR-approved termination language. Effective immediately. Access revoked. Final paycheck details to follow. I took a screenshot, not for sentimentality for the timestamp. 8:03. My Slack avatar went gray. 543 channels. 6 years of conversations. Vanished. The modern equivalent of being erased from existence. 8:04. Gmail kicked me out mid-sentence. I'd been drafting a response to our sole distributor about launch timing. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd cut me off while I was still working for them. 8:05. I opened my personal laptop, the one they'd never touched, never monitored, never controlled. The terminal window was already open, cursor blinking patiently. One command, that's all it would take. But first, coffee. I walked to the kitchen, measured 18 grams of beans, ground them medium fine. The ritual mattered. Precision mattered. Everything I was about to do required the same careful attention I'd given to building their brand. 8:11. First sip, Ethiopian, bright, with notes of bergamot. I'd discovered this roaster while researching packaging suppliers for Aurique's limited edition sets. Another piece of my life they thought they owned. 8:12. Back at the laptop, the Python script I'd written was elegant in its simplicity. Triggered by email bounce back, it would 1. Connect to USPTO's electronic filing system. 2. Upload the completed trademark application. 3. Submit priority examination request. 4. Process payment from my LLC's account. 5. Forward confirmation to my personal email. 6. Delete itself. Clean, untraceable, automatic. 8:13 a.m. I composed a test email to my Vexora address. Subject testing. Body, goodbye. A14. Delivery failed. Corporate email officially dead. The script awakened. After 15. Connection established. I watched the terminal scroll through its tasks like a pianist running scales. Each line of output was a note in my symphony of legal revenge. 8:16. Form uploaded. 9 pages of meticulous documentation, prior use claims, specimen submissions, every field completed with evidence I'd been collecting for months. 8:18. Priority examination requested. An extra $2,500 to jump the line, worth every penny to ensure they'd know within days, not months. 8:28. Payment processing. My LLC's credit card, established months ago, funded with my own money, clean separation from anything corporate. 8:22. The terminal showed submission complete, application received. The die was cast. But the USPTO works on government time. Even priority processing takes minutes that feel like hours. I made another coffee, checked my personal email, watched San Francisco wake up through my window. 8:41. Nothing yet. I pulled up Vexora's internal wiki on my archived browser cache. Bryce's Brand Evolution Initiative was scheduled to launch next Monday. New agency, new direction, same name they didn't own. 8:44 a.m., refreshed email, nothing. 8:45 a.m., again, nothing. 8:46. Started composing a LinkedIn update about being excited for new opportunities. The charade mattered. Let them think I was scrambling, desperate, defeated. 8:47 a.m., refresh. 8:48 there it was. United States Patent and Trademark Office application received. Confirmation. Application number 97. Mark Orique. Owner Ward. Creative Holdings, LLC. Status, priority examination granted, expected initial review 5 to 7 business days. I read it twice, screenshotted it, saved it in 3 locations. Then I leaned back in my chair and finished my coffee. Somewhere across the city, Vexora Labs was operating under the assumption they owned their future. Marketing was probably finalizing Monday's campaign. Legal was likely reviewing contracts with the new agency. Bryce was almost certainly in a meeting, using my strategies while planning my replacement. None of them had checked their email yet. The general counsel wouldn't get the USPTO watch notice for another hour. It would take them another hour to understand what it meant. By lunch, panic would set in. By dinner, they'd realize they had 2 options: pay me or rebrand everything. I closed my laptop and got dressed. Professional blazer, good jeans, the kind of outfit that says, creative professional between opportunities. There was a new coffee shop in Potrero Hill I'd been meaning to try. Seemed like the perfect morning for it. After all, I had nothing but time. They had less than a week. The first crack appeared at 10:23 a.m. I was sitting in Sightglass Coffee, laptop open to a fake job search, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, 415 area code. I let it ring through to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. This time I recognized the number Vexora's main line. They were using the reception phone, probably because my blocked list included every executive's direct dial. By 10:30, I had 6 missed calls and 3 texts from numbers I didn't recognize. The panic was spreading through the building like wildfire. I could picture it legal huddled in the corner conference room, laptops open to USPTO's database, watching their empire crumble in real time. At 10:47, an email slipped through from a personal Gmail account. Elena, this is Margaret from Legal. We need to discuss an urgent matter regarding intellectual property. Please call immediately. Margaret Chen, General Counsel, the woman who'd signed off on every contract, every filing, every piece of paper except the one that mattered. I'd always liked Margaret. She was competent, thorough, and about to have the worst day of her professional life. I didn't respond. At 11:05, my phone rang again. This time, I answered. Elena, Bryce's voice, stripped of its usual consulting confidence. Bryce, I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. Silence. I could hear breathing. The muffled sounds of others in the room. Speakerphone. They were all listening. There seems to be a misunderstanding, he began. Oh. This trademark filing. Obviously. There's been some kind of mistake. I laughed. Short, sharp, genuine. No mistake. I filed for the Auric trademark at 8:48 this morning. The confirmation is quite clear. That's impossible. Auric is property of Vexora Labs. Actually, it's not. You never filed for it. I checked. More silence. Whispered consultations in the background. Someone said exposure, and someone else said board meeting. Elena, you developed Auric as an employee. That makes it work for hire, property of the company. I developed Auric in 2017. I was hired in 2018. The documentation is extensive. That's not... He stopped. Started again. Your employment agreement clearly states all intellectual property belongs to Vexora. All intellectual property developed during my employment. Auric predates that. Page 17 of the brand strategy document you signed acknowledges this. Would you like me to send you a copy? The silence stretched longer this time. I could imagine them scrambling, pulling up documents, searching for the fine print they'd never bothered to read. Margaret's voice cut through. Elena, what do you want? Direct, honest. That's why I'd always liked her. I want a licensing agreement. 20% of net revenue on any product using the Auric name or branding. 20%, Bryce's voice cracked. That's insane. It's non-negotiable. You have 72 hours to agree, or I start shopping the trademark to your competitors. I believe Estee Lauder was very interested in our formulations last year. You can't do that. I can do whatever I want with my own property, just like you did with my employment. Someone muted their end. For 3 minutes. I sat in the coffee shop, watching San Francisco tech workers type on MacBooks, oblivious to the corporate murder happening over the phone. When they came back, it was Margaret speaking. We need time to review this with the board. 72 hours, I repeated. My lawyer will send the licensing terms within the hour. Your lawyer. Morrison and Forster. I believe you know them. I hung up before they could respond, turned off my phone, closed my laptop. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy. Startups being born, companies dying, fortunes made and lost between coffee runs. Just another Tuesday in San Francisco. But in a glass tower overlooking the bay, an executive team was learning a lesson they'd never forget: the difference between owning a company and owning its soul. The soul had just set its price. 20% seemed fair for 6 years of building their dreams. It was certainly better than the nothing they'd tried to leave me with. The callback came at 11:05 the next morning. I'd expected them to wait until the last possible moment, but desperation has a way of accelerating timelines. Elena, it's Margaret. Are you able to join a call with the board? I was at my kitchen table, reviewing licensing agreements my lawyer had sent over. Of course. Give me 5 minutes. It was a video call. I counted faces, full board attendance, plus Bryce, Margaret, and someone I didn't recognize, probably outside counsel. 9 people who'd thought they owned an empire, staring at me through laptop cameras. Richard Keller, the lead board member, spoke first. Ms. Ward, we've reviewed your claim. It's not a claim. It's a registered trademark application. Pending application, their outside counsel corrected. With priority examination and documented prior use, we both know how this ends. Keller's jaw tightened. Your demand is unreasonable. 20% would make you one of the highest paid contractors in the industry. I'm not a contractor. I'm a licensor. And Auric isn't just any brand, it's the brand that justified your last valuation. A brand built with company resources, Bryce interjected. A name conceived before the company existed, unless you're claiming Vexora owns my thoughts from 2017. The lawyer whispered something to Keller. Papers shuffled. Mute buttons clicked on and off. We're prepared to offer 5%, Keller said finally. 20! That's more than our entire marketing budget. Then you should have budgeted for trademark registration. Silence. I could see Bryce's face reddening, his consultant composure cracking. Margaret looked tired. The others looked expensive, which meant they were calculating burn rates by the minute. 10%, Keller tried, and a one-time payment of $200,000. 20%, no signing bonus, just a clean licensing agreement. You're being unreasonable. I'm being mathematical. Your last investor deck projected $100 million revenues within 18 months. 20% of that is $20 million. The cost of rebranding, new packaging, marketing campaigns, retailer notifications, FDA refiling would be at least $30 million, plus the loss of brand equity, plus the time delay, plus explaining to investors why you don't own your own name. More muting, more whispering. I pulled up my email, forwarded my lawyer another document, the investor update, where they'd explicitly stated Auric was their primary asset. When they unmuted, it was Margaret speaking. What if we matched your salary for 2 years? Consulting agreement. You help with the transition. I don't want to consult. I want to license. Be reasonable, Elena. You know this brand needs... The brand needs nothing from me. It's complete, perfect, ready to scale. All you need is permission to use the name I created. Bryce finally exploded. You planned this. You sabotaged us. I documented my work. You failed to secure it. Which one of us was doing our job? Keller raised a hand, silencing Bryce. The power dynamics were shifting. The board was realizing who'd actually failed here. 15%, Keller said. Final offer. I smiled. They couldn't see it. I'd turned off my camera, but I smiled. 20%. You have 47 hours remaining. Elena. Actually, make it 25%. The price goes up 5% every time you try to negotiate down. Gasps. Actual gasps. Like I'd slapped them through the internet. You can't. 30%. Would you like to try again? Complete silence. Nobody even breathed. Send the agreement to my lawyer, Keller said finally, his voice dead. 20%. Excellent decision. You'll have it within the hour. I stayed on long enough to watch Bryce's face cycle through the stages of grief. Denial was already behind us. Anger flickered and died. Bargaining had failed. Depression was settling in. Acceptance would come with the first royalty check. One more thing, I added, just before disconnecting. The license is exclusive to Vexora for now, but if you're ever late on a payment, even by a day, it becomes non-exclusive. I thought you should know I've already had interest from 3 competitors. I clicked leave meeting before anyone could respond. My phone immediately lit up with texts, calls, emails. I ignored them all, opened my laptop, and started browsing real estate listings. 20% of $100 million could buy a lot of distance from San Francisco. The paperwork arrived at my lawyer's office by 3 p.m. 23 pages of licensing agreement, crafted by very expensive attorneys trying to claw back whatever leverage they could find. Morrison and Forster dismantled their attempts in under an hour. By sunset, we had signatures. Ward Creative Holdings, LLC, was now the proud licensor of the Auric TM brand to Vexora Labs, Inc., 20% of net revenues, quarterly payments, with a particularly satisfying clause: any attempt to dilute, damage, or abandon the brand would result in immediate reversion of all rights. They'd have to keep building what I created, exactly as I created it, while paying me for the privilege. I celebrated quietly. Champagne at the St. Regis, table for one, overlooking the city where I'd built and lost and reclaimed my future in the span of 6 years and 46 minutes. The bubbles tasted like vindication. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. The agreement is filed. The board wants you to know they hope there are no hard feelings. I didn't respond. Hard feelings were for people who hadn't planned their revenge down to the semicolon. 3 weeks later, the first licensing check arrived. I was living in Carmel by then, in a cottage overlooking the Pacific. The amount was substantial. Even their soft launch had exceeded projections. 20% of substantial is life-changing. I deposited it, sent a professional thank you note to accounts payable, and went back to my new routine. Morning walks on the beach, afternoon writing sessions, evening wine on the deck, watching the sun dissolve into the ocean. Sometimes I checked Vixora's Instagram. They were still using my captions, my aesthetic, my voice, every post, every campaign, every success 20% mine. The ultimate passive income being paid for work they'd already fired me for doing. Bryce lasted another 4 months. His LinkedIn update about pursuing new opportunities was posted the same day their Q3 numbers came out. Apparently, explaining to investors why 20% of revenues went to a former employee hadn't gone well. I sent him a bottle of champagne, Krug, vintage. The note said simply, "For new beginnings." He didn't respond, but the delivery confirmation said he'd signed for it personally. A year later, at a conference in Los Angeles, I ran into one of Vexora's junior designers. She recognized me immediately, rushed over with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she'd heard the story. "Elena. Oh my God, you're like a legend at the office." "Am I?" "They use you as a case study in every contracts meeting now. Remember to file the trademark is basically our motto." I smiled. "Good. Learning from mistakes is important." "Was it really just 46 minutes? "From termination to trademark, yes." She shook her head, amazed. "That's the most badass thing I've ever heard." Maybe it was. Or maybe it was just what happened when you confused creating something with owning it. When you thought the person who named your child was less important than the person who paid for the birth certificate. Vexora still sends my checks on time. Direct deposit, first of the month, like clockwork. The brand continues to grow, expand, succeed everything I'd envisioned when I sketched that first logo on a napkin. They execute my vision beautifully. And I let them, for 20%. The cottage in Carmel is paid off now. I spend my days writing, consulting occasionally for founders smart enough to file their paperwork. When people ask what I do, I tell them I'm in licensing. "What kind of licensing?" "The expensive kind." They laugh, thinking it's a joke. If only they knew the price of forgetting to own what you've paid for. If only they understood that in the space between firing someone and changing the passwords, entire empires can change hands. 46 minutes. That's all it takes to turn termination into triumph, if you know exactly where to aim. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know which city or country you're tuning in from. I love connecting with listeners around the world. If you enjoyed this tale of trademarking triumph, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a brilliant workplace revenge? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below.